Hello, my name is Daniela del Castillo Locatelli. You guys know me from the Captain Swan podcast and the Captain Hook podcast for the Once Upon a Time show that I did with my friend Lisa, aka You Brought Me Home. And welcome to the first episode of Westerosi Nights. That's a podcast to celebrate the series of Game of Thrones and to the countdown and premieres soon. There will be doing two of its eighth season that's premiering next year. Well, now I want to introduce and do today's episode is a introduction and a talk about its first season, how I became a fan, and um I I watched this, how I got to watch the show, how I became a fan, and got what impressions I got from the the first time I watched the first season. Well, the first episode that I watched of Game of Thrones, I was like finishing. I was in between shows. I was between Glee. I just finished watching the last season of Gossip Girl, and when I first watched HBO and then they were just meeting this series, I was like, I'm gonna watch it. So I watched the first episode. It was very interesting, the whole concept of the Seven Kingdoms and this futuristic medieval time. Very interesting. I recognize some of the actors who were in the show, like who played Ed Stark, Sean Bean, and the actor who does Robert Baratheon. I got my first impression as of Ned Stark. He's like this hero. He wants to do the right thing to protect his family, to protect the North. And when he hears this call of some guy from the Night's Watch that deserted because he saw night walkers. Everybody in Westeros believed that they were extinct for thousands of years, and he kind of didn't believe it. His children, Rob, his eldest son, who was like his character, was like 16 years old back then, and his daughter Sansa, who's 13, his little kids, um, Rickon, Bran, and his little brave warrior's daughter of Ned and Lady Catelyn Stark, Arya, and sweet and beautiful Sansa, who dreamed of being a prince, being a queen, getting out of Winterfell and going to the capital. Like many other girls when they're teenagers, they dream of that, and like I think that it is the very cute event. Excuse me. Sorry for the interruption. What was I saying? I was very interesting because each of them were different. Like Sansa wanted to be a queen. She wanted to get a Winterfell, marry a prince. Arya wanted to be a warrior. John wanted to find him Jon Snow, the bastard of Winterfell. He was his life was just at the he was always living like at the shadows because he was the son. I mean, he was the son of Ned Stark and his supposedly lover he had during his fight in the rebellion against the Mad King. And Now now he received some news from the south that his good friend and mentor John Aaron was married to his wife's sister, Lady Liza Aaron, who's a bit of not case herself. And they suspected that somebody did it because he knew something that they didn't want him to to tell King Robert, and he received that King Robert was coming to Winterfell to visit his friend and ask him to be the hand, like his assist, like his hand, his advisor to rule when he can and when his son is still too young. And that introduces the next part of the episode, which is when Robert Baratheon and his wife, Queen Cersei of House Lannister, and their three children and their knight in their Kingsguard come to Winterfell to visit Ned Stark and his family. And yet you see, Robert Baratheon was not the handsome and brave man he was back then. He became a big guy who drinks and cheats on his wife. But then again, he's a good man, only not the best ideal king that Westeros has, but it was the one they had back then. And my impressions on Queen Cersei, played by the wonderful Lena Headey, and she was like the first one. She gave me like this flaunty queen who thinks she's this Miss Diva, Miss Glamorous, who Miss feared some this fearsome this fearsome aura that she wanted to be respected as not only as a woman but as a queen. And also introduced her handsome yet at the same time back then was just like a bad guy, Jamie Lannister, her brother who never married. At that moment, I didn't suspect there was a something between him and Cersei until the end of the episode. But the character of House Lannister, besides Tom and Marcella, who were just innocent kids, loved but ignored because their mother was favored their eldest, who I thought was a good kid when I saw him, but Joffrey, obviously, but well, appearances don't exactly transpand. And then we introduce the favorite Lannister of them all, Tyrion Lannister, who was in a brothel while when he came by brothel with his favorite little whore Ross, who could have it would have took Jon Jon Snow's virginity when he turned 15, but he didn't. But she didn't, and obviously he had to be in Winterfell with the rest of in the rest of the family in their visit to the fortress of Winterfell, that is the home of House Stark. The difference between the Lannisters is when in the Starks is that the Starks are family. They're happy, they love each other, they got each other's back, and they never betray each other for power or for greed or for jealousy. And that's when I first saw them in the first part when they introduced this family in Winterfell itself, that they were happy. Yes, Jon Snow was not loved by his stepmother at the time because he didn't know who he was back then. None of us didn't who were early fans of Game of Thrones didn't know. Back then she wasn't his stepmother. But he was very ignored by most of everyone in the family, with the exception of Ned Stark's younger brother, Brandon. I mean, Benjen Stark. Benjen Stark, who is and was brother of the Night's Watch. He came to visit his family. the permission of Lord Mormont, and he was loved and appreciated by his younger sister, who back then we thought it was his sister Arya, and his little brothers Bran and Rickon. And the only person who was kind of a bitch and an ass and ignored him was Sansa, because it was a custom that lords of the bastard sons or bastard daughters of high lords of Winterfell, of all Westeros, to be ignored and treated as the shame of the lord's infidelity to his lawful wife at the time. Because either way, either they lived with them out of charity, or they were sent to the watch, or the bastard daughters of Westeros, or either sent, or they were living as servants, and still, or they were sent to brothels, because either it was a brothel, or either was being living like a servant, or either they were killed to hide their shame and dishonor of their lawful fathers. Anyway, Robert Baratheon and Ned Stark visit the crypts of Winterfell so they could pay respects to Lyanna Stark, who was Robert Baratheon's betrothed. In that time, when when they were young, and that's when they speak of how he defeated every Targaryen except two, when except two, and also the fact that then Robert Baratheon decided to unite his house and House Stark and its family in a marriage between Sansa and Joffrey, which at then we thought it would be nice, because it's what they always wanted to be, family, to rule the Seven Kingdoms as friends, as allies. Little do they know, across the narrow sea in Pentos there was two of the only last Targaryens, which was 14, 15-year old Daenerys Targaryen and 16-year-old Viserys. Viserys and Lydio, who was a man who kept them safe in his palace ever since they were kids, helped them negotiate with a warlord of the tribe of savages called the Dothraki. And the only way for them to help him take Westeros from Robert Baratheon was through marriage. So he's technically arranged marriage, sold his sister to this warlord called Khal Drogo, played uh, by Jason Momoa, to marry his sister. Daenerys was a 15-year-old girl living with her hateful and controlling brother, and she's played by the wonderful Emilia Clarke. So Daenerys was a beautiful and innocent girl who wanted to go know the world, who was never loved and always controlled and beaten and belittled by her brother, who by tradition of their family, who by hundreds of years married brother and sister to keep the bloodline pure. Yet by curses of the so-called superstition, curse of the gods, that every time a Targaryen and a brother and sister married, a Targaryen became ha, became mentally ill, aka they were cursed by madness. Like it so happened to King Aerys, the Mad King, their father, and also to even to Viserys himself. Little by little, he would have married Daenerys himself, and still negotiate another way to get an army to take Westeros the same way his father would have wanted him to take Westeros by. They know the Viserys know that Daenerys and him were in danger of getting killed by Robert Baratheon so they wouldn't get the Iron Throne, even though they didn't know these two were alive until now. And Daenerys definitely didn't want to marry no one. She just wanted to go home to Westeros without need for marriage, because she was still a virginal and frightened girl who didn't want to be forced to anything. But alas, she had to appeal to her brother, who threatened her to hit her or kill her, have her raped by all the Dothraki blood riders if it took to get those armies to help him get the throne. The entrance met to Daenerys getting married to Khal Drogo, who, when they first met, when they first looked, there was a connection. When she looked at him, she wasn't so much afraid. It's like it was the first time she looked into a man's eyes, and she didn't have fear that he would hurt her or try to rape her or trying to kill her or anything. And then she and Khal Drogo got married, and that's where she and Ser Jorah Mormont, who was an exiled by by King Robert for and a Stark for sailing slaves illegally in Westeros. He came to serve both Daenerys and Viserys in their quest for Viserys to get the Iron Throne from Robert Baratheon. Little do they know that Jorah was Jorah for exchange to go home to Westeros, and is to was ordered by Robert Baratheon to spy on the two princesses of House Targaryen in order to have somebody to poison them or kill them sent from Westeros to where they are to cross the Narrow Sea. Obviously, to kill these two so they won't get the throne. And then we go back to Westeros where Robert Baratheon and Ned Stark held a feast in celebration that he accepted to be the hand of the king. There we see a little romance between Joffrey and Sansa. Because everybody we saw that he was such a nice boy who was just had a bitch for a mother and a drunk for a father. A good man, but drunk for a father. And obviously we saw a little bit of introduction between Cersei and Lady Catelyn when they were talking about about her coming to Kingston to Westeros to the north for the first time since all the Lannisters are from the south and they've never been to the north more than once or twice. And obviously Cersei's interested in having Sansa marry Joffrey to her to lead Sansa. Even pretend to like Sansa to get to like her. Even asking her if she had her flower, aka if she had her period yet. And obviously Sansa was a little too feared and too innocent to say she didn't. She said no. And that way, I think kind of introduced a little the cockiness and the 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 bitchery between I mean in Cersei, like you see her and she's this queen who thinks she's beautiful, she's perfect, she's powerful, but she's miserable in her marriage because Robert Baratheon cheats on her with Tywin wench whore and servant girl and village girl he can get his eyes on, even in front of her or in secret. And then there's no wonder if he had little bastard sons here and there. Then we introduced my favorite scene of the episode and my favorite in duo, which is Tyrion Lannister and Jon Snow when they first met. The phrase that Tyrion said I think it's one of my favorite phrases he's ever said since since the start of the show is never forget who you are. The whole world will know. Use it as an armor, and that way, and nothing can ever hurt you. And that's a very good phrase that I kind of learned from him. And I think that was the start of their friendship until they see each other again in until their trip to Winterfell. I mean to Castle Black. Um, that's when they all go hunting and and obviously, I think while they go where they go hunting, talks about Robert talks about a war coming. He kind of predicts since now he knows that the Viserys and Daenerys are alive, and that Daenerys is getting married to a warlord, Dothraki. I think it kind of paralleled the war that now in season 8 is about to begin. They began in season 6 and transcured in season 7, and it's gonna start now in the 8th season next year, which is the Great War. And the kind of the where he said a war is coming. They don't know who they'll face, but it's coming. And neither of them didn't survive, and neither of them back then didn't know they wouldn't be there to fight it. There back then, and to end the episode, Cersei and Jamie go to the tower, and that's in. I think they went to this tower that's in Winterfell to mock House Stark, who they don't like, never liked, had to pretend to, and they went there to have sex, and obviously unknown to them, little climber there was, little climber there was Bran Stark was climbing there to the tower. He wanted to get down, so he had to climb inside the tower, and poor kid was in the tower in the wrong time and in a bad moment. Cersei and Jamie saw him, fearing that they would be he will tell Robert that they were about their relationship about and that their children, aka Joffrey, Marcella, and Tommy, will be killed in retaliation for her betrayal with her brother. Jamie from the tower, pushes Bran from the tower. Therefore, that's how he got paralytic and unconscious until further episodes more of it being cured. So that's how the episode ends. This is like the first speak of season 1. Next, I'm gonna be transmitting the next podcast episode. Then we'll talk about season 1 and then the first part of season 2 of Game of Thrones. Um, and it's gonna be at 6 p.m. East for those of you in here in Peru and those of you in America and in Europe and Mexico and all around the world who want to hear it. Here is here you're gonna hear this podcast right here, the same channel at 6 p.m. East. In my channel is Daniel. It's the same name as me, which is Daniela del Castillo Locatelli, which is where you guys can subscribe so you can hear this podcast and either more. I hope you guys like it, and maybe next time there will be some two people or one with me to talk about it and celebrate this eighth season and this entire series that's shocked us, made us laugh, made us cry, made us feel so much fangirl and fanboy feels from the good and the bad, and gave us such amazing characters, such female representation, such LGBTQ representation, such equality, and how the world was in medieval time, how it was, how it should be. In some parts, like how in medieval times, how many difference between now and our time and now and that time, where women didn't have right to do anything but to get married, to be sold, to marry somebody they didn't love and have kids, never had a chance to fight. And I think in these characters like Daenerys, Sansa, and Cersei, and so much more female characters that we've seen, like Yara Greyjoy, obviously, that empowered men. And also that some romances do have happy endings, some don't, but doesn't mean it should. I think I think that's the theme of the series. That life is not that it's not a fairy tale. It's just parts of history combined in this mystical world that is Westeros. And I think I think that I will never forget this show, these characters, and I will always love, always remember each of the cast members. Each of them were exceptional in the first season. I got to know new characters because I did know Sean Bean. I did know the actor who played John. I mean Robert Baratheon. I knew the actress Lena Headey from some movies here and there, but I never knew remembered her name. And I knew Peter Dinklage from smaller roles he has done in TV and movies. And it was the first time I knew Kit Harington, Macy Williams, Sophie Turner, and the rest of the cast goes on and on. And also, I knew the actress who does Osha, the wildling who became the second mother to the younger Stark children and part of their family, and part of the staff of Winterfell through circumstances. I knew I knew some of the actors from Harry Potter, which is the actress who played Osha, as I mentioned right now, and the list goes on and on. And I'm really excited to have done this first podcast for this amazing show, to celebrate this show, to celebrate the countdown for its final season, and then the premiere and the season itself next year. I hope that you guys subscribe at my Twitter. I mean, if you guys want to ask questions and want to, like, I don't know, follow me and want to be part of this podcast, if you guys have a Twitter, I mean a Tumblr and a Twitter, a Tumblr and a Twitter, and especially if you guys want to be in this podcast and you want to be part of it, if you guys have Gmail, and not only a Twitter and a Tumblr, but if you guys have an Gmail, like I do, which my Gmail is glamkitty20, and you guys can like join in. I'll send you the link so you guys can join in the transmission of the podcast, recording every Saturday at 6 p.m. East. For those of you who are still awake at that time. I hope you guys can join. I would really appreciate it. And if you guys want to send your questions, follow me and my Twitter, Queen Witch 151 on Twitter. You guys tweet me, and I'll add you to the podcast, even to the podcast's chat room in Twitter called Westerosi Nights, just like the podcast. I hope you guys follow. So that's it. Seven. I'll see you guys next Saturday night. Seven blessings to you guys, and may the gods old and new bless you guys all. And here's to a good celebration and a good final countdown this year, and for the premiere of the final season of Game of Thrones. I love you guys. Peace out.